Except it's not The Princess Bride.
It's not The Princess Bride. I was going to say that
wrong.
too.
That was last week's.
Episode 11.
This is episode 11 of Even Footnotes. Thank you for joining us. I'm here tonight with super friend Kayla from the Potions and Potpourri.
That's me, Special K
universe. Special K in the house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Jason with Even Footing Games. And The Princess Bride was last month's book. This month we actually read. What did we read?
Perception Check by Astrid Knight. There it is.
Got a copy. Yep. It has pages.
A lot of pages.
Words. Perception Check. Yes. Put together in the sentences.
It makes a book. What?
Yes, that's how it works.
Wow.
Perception Check is a lit RPG, which I guess is a genre that I didn't know that I had been reading, where people go into a video game or find out their favorite game is real and go into that fantasy world.
I didn't know that was a genre either.
That's cool. What's called lit RPG. Yeah. About a group of friends who find out that the fantasy kingdom in their not Dungeons and Dragons game is actually real and full of dangers and walking around and not as fun as the game is. And that's the synopsis. So great episode, and we will see you. No. What did you think of the book, Emma?
I really liked this book. It pleasantly surprised me, actually. I follow the author on TikTok, so I'm the one that suggested the book for this month because I've been just kind of watching them talk about it a little bit, but I just knew the basics and I didn't really know a lot about the story itself, or hadn't seen any reviews. I hadn't seen anybody else that had read it before. So I was kind of going in blind, more or less, other than just knowing the synopsis. And I really liked it. Yeah. What about
you? It's a bit of a heavy book. Just trigger warning right off the bat, everyone in this book has trauma of some sort that they're dealing with. I don't think I've ever read a more broken group of people. Unless you're playing like an old game of Dungeons and Dragons when everyone is an orphan. It's kind of one of those things. But it's. I don't know that I liked it. I didn't dislike it though. I think I just thought it was okay. Like I wasn't for a debut novel. It's good. It's well written. It moves along at a pretty good clip. And I mean, getting the whole idea of your fantasy world being more traumatic than the real world to some extent. But yet that's where you go to find yourself. I like that idea in general. But yeah, no, I didn't get connected to this one. And I don't think it was any problem with the book itself. I just some things just don't click, and this one just doesn't click for me. But you felt it clicked for you?
Yeah, kind of right away. I mean, there was like the trauma aspect of it, but it wasn't like that bad compared to some of the books we've read recently.
No. Yeah, right.
It's just, like the kind of tragic backstory element of the thing. But I think one of the things that struck me the hardest about this book was the realism of being a person that gets sent into a TTRPG. I kind of felt like that was really well written and like narrated very, very interestingly, where the main character is like, shit, I'm just a level 0 person in a real life magical world that can't use weapons or magic. And there's like literally an ogre right here that could like squash my brains in. Like that actually like really set the hook in for me where I was like, damn, that is how that would feel if I went into the D&D world right now.
But the main character, Violet, finds out pretty quickly once she's in the fantasy world that she actually does. Like she's a pretty adept magic user, pretty right off the bat,
Right.
There are three people from the normal world, from our world, who go over, and they were all. Violet had a friend who was kidnapped by demons when she was a kid and dragged into this fantasy world, which she does not find out until or she didn't put two and two together at first, because they don't think the fantasy world exists. She's dealing with the trauma from that. She lives with her friend Eddie, and they're in a very kind of codependent relationship. They've kind of agreed to slack together. She's been in and out of college. They're working odd jobs here and there. And then their friend Jackson, who Violet has known since they were kids. Jackson was the other member of their trio. Her and her friend May, who was pulled into the other dimension. So there's those three, and then there's Adrian, who is ostensibly one of the creators of the game, but you find out that he was actually originally from the magic world, and he has a dark past that is, I don't know if it was supposed to be a secret twist, but I kind of saw that it coming.
Yeah,
miles
you
away.
said it was the M. Night Shyamalan style twist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But not like the Sixth Sense where you might actually not get it. It was you figured it out right away. Oh, there's a twist coming. And then they made it. There's an elf and there's a not halfling and an ogre who joins their party as well. But they've all got stuff going on with them. But the part there was a section because just while you were thinking about how it was real people in this fantasy world, Eddie, who is he's their forever game master, is having the most miserable time of all of them. Because Violet has magic. Jackson pulls out basically pulls a King Arthur at some point and pulls out an enchanted sword out of nowhere. And Eddie can't do any of that. He basically becomes the jester of the group, which he is not happy about at first. But I think that was probably where I connected most. Like, yeah, if I ended up in that kind of fantasy world or whatever the case, I would probably be complaining about the blisters all the time too. Like, why are we walking so much? There's so much walking.
Yeah, making all the jokes.
Mm-hmm. To hide my madness. Yeah.
They kind of get to like pick their weapons at one point for the first time when they're in the it's called Belmyra, when they're in the real Dungeons and Dragons world, and Eddie wants to be like the paladin or the knight or whatever so badly, but it just doesn't quite work out for him.
He keeps his instincts and intentions are that direction, but his abilities do not match up to what he's trying for. But yeah, so they have an adventure and they learn stuff about themselves and each other. And I didn't realize it was just the first book of a series, so it just kind of amps up towards the end there, and then you gotta wait for this, which haven't been written yet, right? I don't think
it's done yet. I think it's started but not finished. I didn't quite realize that either. I think I saw something about like this next part on social media or something, but I didn't quite put it together. But yeah, so one thing we sort of mentioned pacing, but I thought the pacing was pretty good, except for that one like M. Night Shyamalan chapter.
Yeah,
where they're giving that whole dramatic backstory. That was kind of the only time it slowed down a little bit. But then beyond that, I was like, okay, we're getting to like the kind of critical moment of the book that they've been aiming towards this whole time with the group, and I've only got like one chapter left. So like, are they going to fight the big bad in this book, or is there going to be something else? So I was glad to see that it just ended and that they didn't just like rush through that whole scenario,
No, I think the author definitely had a series in mind. I guess it feels very much like you finished the first big half of a campaign, and now it's like, all right, oh good, we got to this ending point that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Now Jim's not going to be able to make the next 7 games because of work, and Mary's got kids, so we'll see each other in 5 months, and maybe we'll be able to pick up whatever the next section is. So
totally.
It really kind of felt like that. It's like, and something happens that maybe cliffhanger at the end. It's like, okay, we'll know what to come back to. I don't know. I just wish I connected with it more. I don't know. Maybe, and I'll be honest, maybe it's just because I'd gotten the Kindle version, so I was just reading it on my phone, and it didn't feel as tactile, and so it might be something to it. It's like I'd like having an actual book, and I the ritual of turning pages is just as much as reading the book as anything is.
Yeah. Fair. Kind of felt just like a chore to get through it, or
it didn't really feel like a chore. It didn't. You ever like when you're sleepy and you're reading a book and you find you've read you realize you read the same 4 lines over and over again, and they
yeah.
don't stick.
Yeah.
Nothing stuck. Like nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's very little that. And again, it was entertaining and it was well written, and I don't want to detract from what Astrid Knight was doing, because um I think the concept is a lot of fun. I think the themes were fun, and I think he handled people dealing with personal trauma very well. It's just so credit where it's due. Just I don't it just wasn't for me, and that's
Fair.
fine. Not everything is supposed to be for everybody. Yeah.
Right. Well, so Erin asks, she said, this was indie published. How would it have been improved with resources of a publisher? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think an editor, like an experienced editor, would have been able to kind of to streamline the book a bit. I think there were some parts that were kind of bogged down by just the same sort of arguments that the characters were going through, or rehashing sort of the same beats. Maybe trimmed out a good 50, 60 pages probably would have zipped it along pretty well.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like for an indie published book, it was pretty like clean cut. There was like, 1 or 2 obvious typos that just didn't get caught. But compared to some of the other indie books that I've read and that we've read in this group recently that were kind of like self-published or indie published, I felt it was a lot more cohesive. And it did have a little bit better flow than some of those smaller published books that we read recently. But it's indie. I mean, you can tell, but I don't think that necessarily detracts from the quality of it the way it has for some books I've read that have been indie or self-published.
Well, the author definitely, he's definitely a talented author. And he's definitely, he likes what he's doing. You know what I mean? He's enjoying writing this book. This isn't a cash grab for him. You can tell that this is coming from a place of love, of working through his own shit, whatever the case may be. So there is that feeling of, okay, this is a personal work to some extent. It didn't feel just like a manufactured, 99-cent YA novel that Kindle throws.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or like that they try to finish it all in like National Writing Month or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
And I agree. I think that they're a really strong storyteller. They have a really big background with D&D and TTRPGs in general. So that's kind of what like prompted them to write this story based on like all their favorite parts of playing in the game and running games and stuff like that. And I think that you can really see that a lot in their writing. Yeah, I got into it pretty quickly. It wasn't like, it's not like the best book I've ever read, but I have already been recommending it to other people that I think would like it. And I found it really entertaining and enjoyable and pretty easy to read multiple chapters at once in like one sitting.
You gonna read the next one when it comes around?
Yeah, probably, depending on how long it takes, if I've forgotten about it or not,
Right. There is always that. It's been a few years, not to speak poorly of taking a while to write a book, because Lord knows I know what that's like. And he hasn't reached George R.R. Martin levels or anything like that. But yeah, I think if you like the genre, this is a good, again, better than some of the books that I've read of the same kind of idea. Yeah, I think it's fine. I thought it was fine. I just, there's been other books that I've enjoyed more.
Sure.
That we've read.
What was your favorite part? What do you think was like the most interesting part?
Man, they got me on the spot. No, there was a scene towards the end, and I don't want to spoil anything, but Violet is asked to make a choice, a big like a potentially big choice. And before she does, she's kind of given some background information from the person who's it's I don't want to, I can't, like I don't want to talk about it. You get some insight into a character that was very tragic, very sad. And then Violet decides to take that sadness onto her with all it entails. And I thought that was like I saw that's where it was going, but I thought that was a very it was one of the few times I went, oh, okay, all right. So this is a person who's been dealing with their own trauma all this time, and right when they've started to get a handle on it, they're agreeing to take on somebody else's trauma on top of that.
Yeah.
You know? It was very. I thought it was a very selfless part, and I did enjoy that section. What was your favorite part?
I think the first time that they have their battle, that wasn't like necessarily like my top favorite part, but I just thought that was kind of where things got really exciting, you know, because kind of up until that point in the book, you're like, okay, yeah, they're in like a fantasy world. This is really interesting. And the author really kind of takes their time setting up what it's like to be an actual human, real life person from modern day in a fantasy world. And you're like really putting that all together. But then they have to fight enemies. And in this case, it was the direwolves.
Direwolves, that's right, yeah.
Which, and again, like one of the things that struck me about this book is just how well written some of those scenarios were, in my opinion. Like I was really like imagining myself being in that situation instead of like my D&D character being in that situation, and like, oh my god, I would be panicking. Like, how do I use magic? How do I use a sword? And it was just really thrilling. Honestly, there was a lot going on. They kind of broke it down into like the 10-second rounds like you do in D&D. So it was like really easy to like kind of imagine and follow it that way, and kind of like slowed the time down and then sped it back up again. Yeah, so I found that to be really enjoyable, actually.
This was definitely a book written by an RPG nerd for RPG.
Oh, for sure.
I think if you're not familiar with tabletop games, you're going to miss a lot of sort of the winks and the nods.
And even just there's a ton of like pop culture references in there, like a bunch of nerdy references that made me giggle or laugh, you know. So I found that also pretty nice.
I know what you're trying to say there.
I understood most of the references, which was pretty cool. So, you know, maybe that's also why I liked it so much.
There you go. I found that I understood maybe half of them, which made me feel okay for being 20 odd years older than the person who wrote the book. You know, I was like, all right, I'm still a little bit with it. All right. No, it felt very see in the chat they're bringing up Prey of Gods, which I guess I would probably be the closest to.
That was me who brought it up. Well, because Aaron said this was our first indie published book technically, but Prey of Gods was traditionally published. But I actually thought like the kind of fantasy element of the story and the flow of the story was a little bit more enjoyable than Prey of Gods.
Yeah,
you know,
Prey of Gods though was it was a November novel book though, right? I think.
Yes,
I believe it was the case. Yeah.
Or October, maybe. I don't remember.
So you never know why things get published and other things don't. Who knows?
Right.
This was a very queer positive book. Every character, I'm pretty sure every character is in the LGBTQIA community somewhere.
Except for maybe Violet. I guess we don't really know that about her. But maybe.
I was getting the impression that Violet was realizing that she was in love with May and was just kind of starting to get the impression.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Did you ever feel that? Now, this is a trans author who's writing about trans characters, but did you ever feel that it was kind of, I don't want to say forced, but some of the characters, you know, it felt like a throwaway almost. Let me Eddie in particular, I think there's just one little bit where they mentioned, oh yeah, by the way, Eddie's pansexual, and that was something he figured out in college, and then it's just never mentioned again. And it was like, why? You know, it just seemed, I don't know. To me, it felt I hate to say checking off boxes, but it just kind of it didn't seem like it affected Eddie's character one way or the other. Like when J.K. Rowling came out and said Dumbledore was gay all along, it was like, well, there was nothing to show that Dumbledore was gay until you decided to say that. And not that it matters one way or another what a fictional character's sexuality is, but it just it kind of felt like that. It was like, oh, I'm going to toss this in here so that Eddie's in the club now too. So
yeah, I don't know. I felt like the way it was presented was more conversational, you know, than anything. Kind of more of like I think the author was going for more of like Eddie is very accepting of other people because he's kind of part of this like marginalized community.
Gotcha.
You know, because they were a little less heavy-handed with like Jackson King being trans man, and I mean a little more on the heavy side with the whole interaction with Melandridge, who turns out is asexual.
Right.
But you know, like they weren't necessarily beating you over the head with it either. Okay. So
that was actually.
I think they're just trying to portray. They're just trying to portray different strokes of people, you know, like in different ways. Instead of just like outright saying it, and sometimes, but yeah, they were all presented a little differently from each other. So, you know, like Kai, they just automatically started using they them pronouns for Kai without really having to explain it. So
Kai being non-binary was never just
mentioned,
and that
like outright.
It was just they started using they there, and that was and I like that too. I honestly I would almost rather it not even be mentioned, just be the thing. You know, they didn't have it was just, you know, they just that's just how they automatically started referring to Kai. It was
well, for me, I actually kind of liked the clarification with Eddie because they kind of had that thing setting up where like, you know, maybe minor spoiler that Eddie and Violet were like maybe gonna sleep together at some point because they tried and didn't work out. But like, why didn't work out? Is he gay? Is he straight? Is he asexual? You know, so I think it kind of like explained that maybe that could have happened, but it didn't, kind of a thing. So
I thought it's more that they were just really horribly traumatized after her suicide attempt. But
and also just because they're friends and they didn't want to do that. But
sometimes it's weird. Yeah.
But before that had been introduced, you know, they had been alluding to the fact that Jackson and Eddie were attracted to each other.
Right.
So, you know, I was like, well, maybe he's just gay or something, you know, and maybe he's just not attracted to women. So I was just like trying to piece that together as a reader, like what the relationship was. Okay. So it kind of cleared it up for me a little bit to just say outright, you know. Yeah, but I do see where you're coming from. It could have been maybe just a little more subtle the way some of the other characters were.
Yeah, and I'm not always trying to figure out the romantic relationships of characters, and maybe that's that's just me. You know, I'm not necessarily shipping everybody, so I don't always pick up on this character's into that character and who's into that or whatever the case may be. I just know sometimes when you get drunk and you fool around with your friends when you're in your 20s, it ends badly sometimes. So it's usually not a good idea. A little bit of advice for you kids out there. But I think overall it was a well written book. It was good for a first book. I doubt whenever I finally finish my novel, it'll be as readable and as well put together as this was. It just felt more like YA to me than something that I would normally read.
I feel like you've said that about a lot of our books. I'm just realizing.
You've read a lot of YA books, though. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I'd say it's YA, but it's not necessarily like full adult. But there's definitely a lot of adult themes. It's not like children coded. You know,
no, it's definitely
not necessarily. And they're adults, in the story.
Yeah.
They're not like teens or like rebellious
teens.
They're in
their 20s. That's right. So they're younger millennials, older Gen Z. Yeah.
Right. Something like that. So something that I do just want to say really quick is that something that really stood out to me when I was reading this book that has got me thinking a lot about other media that I consume is that Violet, the main character, gets her period while she's on this trip. And I was like, nobody ever talks about that. They never talk about people that menstruate having their periods out in the world. Like, it's not in any vampire media. It's not in books. It's not in like anything. And when it was just like such a basic kind of comment about it, you know, about how she lost her backpack, so she lost all of her
Yep.
tampons.
Yep.
And I was like,
Tampons.
damn, that is just like, that just got me really, really hard, because I was like, they're actually thinking about what a real world person would be experiencing somewhere like this, you know?
Yeah, that scene did. It reminded me of two things. Did you see Turning Red, the Pixar film about the girl who
Oh,
ends up
no, I didn't.
she's a
The red
were-panda or
panda.
whatever? Yeah, she's a red panda.
Yeah. No.
There is a scene where the first time she turns into the panda, she's in the bathroom, and her mom is, what's going on. And basically her mom's thinking that she's on her period, and so mom just runs off and gets tampons and comes back, and it's just, in a Pixar movie, you
Wow.
would have never thought
Yeah.
it, but it was just handled exactly like your mom probably handled it, or anyone's who menstruates when their parent, whomever helped them through the system. It was like, okay, this is the thing that happens. We're gonna get these, and this is how it works. And it was very
Yep.
and it also reminded me of the story. I don't know. You ever heard the story of when Mae Jemison, who was one of the first female astronauts, was going into space? NASA asked her. She was only going to be up there for like a couple of days.
Oh
yeah. NASA asked her how many tampons she would need. Like, would 100 be enough for the 2 days that she was going to be in space?
Yeah, 100 tampons.
Totally no idea. And that's really what it reminded me. It was like, male fantasy writers don't think about this thing, it's like, it's not something that they're concerned about.
And I think it was a first for me. I mean, Erin's in the chat saying that all of her fantasy books have that kind of stuff in it. So like, good for her for reading the right kind of books. But and I've had this conversation recently with some people because I've been thinking about it so much, but I'm like, it's never portrayed in films. It's never portrayed, and especially like apocalyptic or like travel sci-fi fantasy style things. It just doesn't exist ever.
It doesn't,
but then those people can have children and you get pregnant.
Right. It'll be fine. No problem. I think the only time I can remember ever in media, when you're talking about the apocalypse and things that you just don't see, the only time I've ever seen characters worry about condoms in an apocalyptic whatever was like one season of The Walking Dead, like two of the characters had to break into a pharmacy first to see if they had any condoms before they got it. It was like,
that's because they were young.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it was like,
I do remember that.
Nobody ever thinks about that.
Yep. Just fuck the consequences, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so it just really kind of got my gears turning, thinking about a lot of the things that a regular human would experience out in the world that isn't often portrayed in our media. Yeah. So.
And all the privileges that we have being, in this society,
Yeah, modern world.
To comfy shoes and tampons,
How fortunate. But even just, I thought the characters were pretty well written. I didn't think that they were too, like, on the nose or anything. Right. Like, they weren't too stereotypical in any way. Some of them were not even that likable for most of the book. It's like, okay, kind of an annoying person, but I liked that overall as part of the story, as part of like a plot device.
Well, that felt very much part like a D&D group,
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. You've always got the one
like you're serving your purpose, Yeah. But like the way that Violet's trauma is portrayed resonated with me a lot, just like with her anxiety and stuff, because she's just the very beginning of the book. She's like, I've been in therapy for 10 years and these people have basically convinced her outright that none of this happened and she believes it. Yeah. And so she's like, well, so then why am I still having these reactions and stuff? And then it turns out that they were all wrong.
Right.
And that she was right. And she's trying to use all these coping mechanisms to get through like this new trauma of all this stuff actually being true. Yeah. And just like some of her reactions to things, like having panic attacks over like seemingly nothing, or people not noticing what was happening because she was like freaking out so bad in her mind, and just kind of the way that she talked to herself really resonated with me, and is kind of the way I think to myself sometimes too. So I think maybe that's another reason why I like the book so much.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, there are definitely some periods where Violet or some of the other characters were dealing with whatever neurospiciness they were dealing with, and I was like, yeah, okay, I've been there, I know that. Yeah, oh yeah, sure. If they don't have ADHD, they certainly, yeah.
Pretty coded.
Yeah, exactly. Aaron, I'm looking forward to all the tampon books as well.
Yeah, great.
And I'm sure listeners are. So perception check, I think, to sum up, Kayla, you've already been recommending it to people?
Yeah, I would give it maybe 3.5 stars out of 5. It's not like the best book I've ever read, but I thought it was a pretty solid read all the way through for how big it is. It's like almost 500 pages.
Yeah.
And I was entertained. I was able to read it pretty fast, which sometimes is hard for me. And I've told some people that I think would like it that they would probably enjoy it.
There you go. I'll give it 3 toes out of 5. Or 1 foot in this case.
Right.
You're right, because we're even footing. No, I thought it was. I enjoyed it on the whole. It didn't connect with me, but I appreciated it for what it was doing, and I think the author did a good job with what they were trying to accomplish. I think they pulled off. He pulled off what he wanted to pull off. Next month, February.
This month,
we are reading by Sir Terry Pratchett, Equal Rights, a classic Discworld novel. I believe it is the first to feature the witches, if I'm not mistaken. Nanny Og, Granny Esme, and the third, whose name escapes me. But it's one of my favorite series by one of my favorite authors, and I'm very excited. And so we hope that you join us in Margaret, that's her name. Hope that you join us in 4-ish weeks when we will be here with the larger crew to talk about Terry Pratchett's Equal Rights.
Sounds like we'll get more than 2 people to read this book.
I think we probably will. It's a much shorter book.
Yeah.
You at home, feel free to join us too, and you can hop in on the chats and share your 2 cents too. I want to thank Kayla for joining me today.
Thanks for reading this book, Jason.
Thank you for suggesting this book, Kayla.
You're welcome.
You can find Kayla at Potions and Potpourris with the Gal Pals, one of the great D&D talking about RPG and real life podcasts out there. I'm at Even Footing Games Presents. Keep an eye out for the next couple of months. We might have something finally coming out on the shelves for our Babies and Broadsword series. But for now, this has been Even Footnotes, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Well. Bye. I'm ending it.